Welcome back, Nuggets, to another video about being a better game designer. There is one question that haunts the dreams of every game designer, and that is my game actually fun? Lucky for us, there is an easy way to find out if your game is actually fun, and that is through playtesting. But to run a smooth playtest and get out of the playtest all the data and answers to your questions, there are a couple of things you need to keep in the back of your mind. And so in this video, I want to go over my process of running a playtest so that hopefully in the future, you can make the best playtests as possible. First, we actually have to realize that playtests are an invaluable piece of making games. And it is crazy because I see so many game developers and game designers simply not playtesting their games. Perhaps you are scared of the feedback, or you're just constantly in a state of, my game isn't ready, I need to make more, I need to make more polish, I need to make more mechanics, I need to make more things. I say to that, no, because the first rule of making games, at least in my book, is test often and test small. So, as many times as possible and as many times as you can manage, run playtests. If you have something really quick and dirty, you made a prototype, have other people, other than family and friends, people that are not actually scared to tell you what's up if your game sucks, have those people test your prototypes. If you made a new mechanic, make a build and have other people playtest it. Playtest often and playtest small. In the end, as a game designer and game developer, it is our goal to make a game that players love playing. At least that's sort of the assumption that I'm making. Obviously, if you're making a game just for yourself or just as a learning experience, things can be different. But if you're in it to win it, then players need to actually like your game. And more often than not, the ideas that you come up with in your head and the way that you visualize and sort of see your game in your own dreams is not often aligned with what players actually like. And so that is why it is so important to have actual players test your game and to see how they feel about your ideas and about your game. Because that is what makes the best game possible. And that is something that you hear me say on this channel a lot of times. I always say, help me make Wrenched the best game possible. And I truly mean that. And that should be true for your game as well. And as soon as you invite other players and other people to sort of step into your world and step into the ideas and the game that you're trying to create, you really get a feel for if it is something that they would actually like, and if there's problems they run into, things they don't understand, things that could be better. That is actually the only way, because more often than not, when you're like this close to your own game all the time, you sort of lose track of the bigger picture and lose track of all the things that you are trying to implement. One example is often game designers will have sort of their entire game inside of their head and have all the little nuances and all the little details they can just pick and choose, and so they fill in the gaps of their game automatically, right? So you're playing a level and here there should be this statue which has a puzzle, and here you should see something like this and something like that. So as a designer, you know all these intricate little details, but if somebody new comes to your game, they start playing it, they're like, what the hell is this area? I don't know what to do, I don't know where to go. But that is exactly the valuable feedback that you want as a game designer to, again, make your game the best game possible. So let's jump into some of the things that you can do to really make your playtests really valuable. I already touched upon this, but test often and test small. As soon as you have something that is possible to be tested and you would like some feedback on it, don't hesitate to do it. It's better to run a couple of small tests than to make one giant build, one giant alpha with everything in it, and then figure out that half of the stuff that you created does not work. Because more often than not, small changes trickle down during development, right? So if you start off with, for instance, for Wrenched, I started off with movement. Movement sort of it dictated how the rest of the game was built. So if you create a giant build with everything in it and you test it and you find out that some of the foundational pieces are missing or are just wrong or need to be reworked, then that will have a lot of influence on the rest of development. So that is why you want to test small and test often. The next thing you really want to do is make a solid plan. And the plan is mainly for yourself, but also for the players that will be testing your game. And the plan should have really clearly stated what it is that you want out of the test. Do you want feedback on art? Do you want feedback on mechanics? Do you want to find out if players like the feel of a certain mechanic? Would you like to know if players know where to go? Do you want to check your level design? You simply cannot test everything at once. That, again, is why rule number 1 is test often and test small. But you as a designer should have it very clear what it is that you want to test, because that way you can sort of prime the players and you can, well, basically set up the perfect demo. If, for instance, you want to test level layout or like general mechanics, a gray box demo is perfect for that. But if you want to test art, obviously a gray box demo will not cut it. And if you want to test the art, but you don't have the movement mechanics down, then it might also be really difficult for players to play through that. So have a solid plan of what it is that you want to test and what it is that you expect of your players. Because one thing that you might often notice is, again, take the example if you want to test the level layout or you want to test some platforming things and you have a gray box demo, then more often than not, people are unable to look through that and they will say, well, this game looks frickin' ugly. Where's the art? I don't really like the design. And as a designer, you're like, duh, it's a gray boxed game. There's no art. There's no design. There's not even sound in it. Of course, I'm not finished yet. I'm still working on that. But if you don't specify that clearly to your players, you will get feedback like, I don't like the art. So again, have a very clear plan of what it is you want to test and also communicate that to the players that are going to test your game. Really, really clearly list, all right, I would like feedback on this, I would like feedback on that, I would like feedback on this, and please ignore this, this, and this. And you know while going in that there is no art, that it is a gray box, that we are still working on designs, the NPC, I don't know, has a wrong texture. That is all fine. Please look through that. Just focus on this, that, and that. And that way, when you get a lot of feedback, you will know that the feedback is generally in the area that you want feedback about and is actually valuable. Now, one thing that most designers, but especially playtesters, will overlook is the fact that playtesting a game, next to being, well, a big responsibility and taking a lot of time, is actually somewhat of an art. As we mentioned in the previous point, you will need to be able to look through certain things as, you know, the game is still in development, especially with early release builds and playtests. Well, things are going to be rough, things are going to be broken, things are going to be, you know, they're not going to be done. It's not a finished product yet. So you really have to look through all those things and sort of see the thing that you want to playtest. But there's also the technical aspects of it, right? So if you playtest a game and you come across a bug, it is actually imperative for the developer to know what the bug is, where the bug is, but also reproduction steps. So how can the developer recreate the bug so that they can actually test and verify that it is an actual bug and repair that bug? So if you have a lot of inexperienced playtesters, you will need to guide them through the process of, all right, how do you set up these reproduction steps? How do you sort of send in bugs? How do you send in feedback? Because one thing you will want to avoid is having players say, I don't like the art. I don't like this mechanic. Combat's lame. Because you really want to prime the playtesters in, alright, so if you say combat is lame, please tell me what is lame about it. Please tell me what would you like to see different. What did you expect? What, you know, so there are a lot of questions about a simple remark as combat is lame. And so again, you will have to prime your playtesters to actually give you that information. So you can't just dump your demo on them and say, hey, please go test and let me know what you think, because then more often than not, you will simply get back, yeah, I liked it. All right, but as a designer, I would love to know what it is you liked, what it is you didn't like, why you like that, what you would do differently, what you would like to see, what you expected, what you didn't expect. That is often a very valuable question. So you really have to, again, instruct and let your playtesters know on how to technically give you your feedback. So make sure when you run a playtest and you have sort of a explanation document to really add those steps in how they need to submit their feedback. One thing I really love to do and has been proven to be invaluable during my playtesting process is to pre-test my test. Now, what I mean with that is before I release a playtest to the general public or a large group of people, I would usually get 3 or 4 people to pre-test that playtest, which sounds weird, but as game development is weird, more often than not, your build and your playtest will have large technical bugs. I once had this crazy bug where I completely forgot to do keyboard controls. Yeah, so if I would have sent out this playtest to, say, 50 people, and 25 people would have played the game with a keyboard, then just like that, all of a sudden, I would have rendered 25 valuable playtests, completely wasted, because all those 25 people will have come back with the same feedback. I cannot play your game because the controls are broken. And then you have to do a hotfix, release a new test build, blah, blah, blah. And that will take a lot of time, a lot of effort. And more often than not, 50% of those people will be like, yeah, I'm not going to test this game again. This game is broken. And as a designer, you will have to seriously respect your playtesters' time, as playtesting a game, again, is a big responsibility and takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. Say if you've created a game of, 6 to 8 hours and you ask someone to play through that whole game to let you know what they think about it, that's a big ask. Now, I know there are a lot of big studios that have a lot of big fandoms and a lot of following where people are they are sort of honored to playtest, and they are lining up to playtest the new Call of Duty, they're lining up to playtest the new GTA game. But for most of us indie developers, finding playtesters is something that is, more often than not, very rare. So you really have to respect their time. And so to make sure that your build is actually technically sound, right? I love to do these pre-tests with a couple of people. And I let them know, right, okay, so we're going to do a pre-test. That means there could be game-breaking bugs. So if you sign up for this and you would like to be a part of this, know that I will be hot-fixing and rebuilding the game, and it will take a lot more time. But, I will love you for it. But that way, I make sure that when I send out my playtest to a big group of people, that I won't have stupid bugs like the keyboard controls are not there, or this screen doesn't open, or the pause menu is broken, stuff like that. Because those bugs, they just creep in. And in the end, when you playtest something, especially as a game designer, you want to know how they what they think of the mechanics, how the game feels, if they know what to do, stuff like that. You don't necessarily want to hear, when I press this button, nothing happens. It's yeah, that's just a dumb bug, and you should have tested that yourself. So doing a pre-test is something that can be really, really valuable, even for the smallest of playtests as possible, because again, you need to respect your playtesters' time. One thing I would also recommend you to do is to keep track of some automatic things. So in your code in Unity, you could keep track of player times, how many times a player dies, in what level they reset, in what items they use, at what checkpoints they restart most often, but all sorts of things like that. In Wrenched, I made a full debug class for in my playtest builds, which basically keeps track of all these things and automatically prints it to a text file. This is very, very handy and invaluable for me, as it lets me know how many times players died, where they died, so I can adjust levels and difficulty on that. And it is actually fairly simple to do, as I keep track of that data anyway for for achievements, and so I just, every time the game saves, I have it saved to a document. Now, in the full build, that is something that you would remove, as it sort of creates some overhead, but during playtests, it is really easy to keep track of, and it's one less thing that you have to ask your playtesters, right? If you want to, if you have to ask them, can you count up the number of deaths that you had, where, and in what level, and if you keep a stopwatch ready to time how long it took you to finish all the levels, that would be really cool. Players are not going to do that, and that is something that can be done automatically very, very easily. So I would suggest you would definitely do that. And if you're not a programmer yourself, but you have a team of developers and programmers, ask them to do that, as you know, it's also really nice to get that data about your game. And while you are at it, also get some technical information like screen resolution, platform, well, all the things you can basically read out in Unity, like the graphic settings that they use, stuff like that, as that information is also really invaluable. One of the bugs that I ran into is that I did not expect a lot of players to have a giant monitor, which would basically mess up my entire UI. So I had to account for that, especially as the Wrenched will be released on PC. I really had to account for that, and I did not think about that before I saw back all that data about what resolution and what screens people were using. So again, if you can get that technical information, that is also something, you know, while you're testing, while you're at it, automatically grab that data. Please tell your players that they are giving you that data and that you are sort of automatically tracking that, as that is a nice thing to do. Yeah, so getting that data automatically can be something that is very easy to do and very valuable. And last but not least, make it easy for your playtesters to download your game. Put your demo on Steam, put your demo on itch, put your demo somewhere that is very, very easy to download and to start. Don't do a Dropbox link with an installer and a README file with a code that you have to. Make it as easy as possible. Because again, as designers, we need to respect the time that the playtesters were putting into this playtest, and we want to make it as easy as possible and have as little people as possible say, this is too much work, I'm gonna give up. Because in the end, you want all the data that you can get. The same goes for sending in feedback. I usually use a Google form, as it is just an easy way to also keep track of all the data coming in, and it makes graphs and it makes reading and sifting through the feedback much easier. But having some place where your players can easily send in their feedback will also again make sure that playtesters actually submit their feedback, because if you make that process difficult and tenuous as well, they will just not do it and you will have wasted a good playtest. And there you have it, Nuggets. Those are my tips on running a smooth and valuable playtest. Now, if you think that I missed anything and you want to let any new and upcoming designer know your tips on running a good playtest, make sure to drop them in the comments down below. And if you're down there anyway and you thought this video had some value, please click that like button. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel. And if you haven't wishlisted Wrenched, wishlist Wrenched. In any case, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.